pursuit is that it's a very submission-based approach instead of just trying to score points. Because I think there's been a problem with these rule sets where, I mean, even though Abu Dhabi's done an amazing job of showcasing elite grapplers, there's something weird about their score set systems. So the first 5 minutes, there's no points scored.
That's correct, yes.
And then the next 5 minutes, you score points. So you get guys stalling out for 5 minutes. So you almost guarantee a boring 5 minutes unless you have some sort of Marcelo Garcia attacker who just dives on submissions and goes after it right away, which is not the norm. The norm is points-based guys who are just trying to win.
That's correct. As a general rule, athletes are smart and they want to win. So they will, as a general rule, always try to find the least risky way of attaining victory and doing the minimum amount of work in order to get to a win. And yet the spectators are demanding something else. They're demanding entertainment. And in the sport of jiu-jitsu, the most entertaining thing you can do is to push the action towards submission holds. And submissions function in grappling the same way a knockout punch does in boxing. And it's the most desired result. It's also the most impressive result. If you think, Joe, back to when you first started jiu-jitsu, what was its primary appeal? Well, I think for the overwhelming majority of practitioners of jiu-jitsu was the idea of submission.
I think that's the only appeal.
Yeah,
I don't think you could ever say anybody, I find it appealing to win on points.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
or even worse, on advantage.
Yeah,
right?
you just wrestle if you want to do that. Yeah.
When you look at jiu-jitsu, what makes it remarkable is the idea that it's a form of grappling where the outcome is determined in a way which it's understandable to anyone. It's surrender. You make someone surrender to you. Like, as impressive as judo, wrestling are as sports, the mechanism by which they win, in judo's case, the ippon throw, they do have submissions in judo, but they're much less emphasized. And in wrestling at pin, they're not as decisive. Like, it's easy to imagine someone who got pinned with their shoulders on the mat for 3 seconds but came back to win the fight. That's not a difficult thing to conceive of. It's easy to conceive of someone who got thrown pretty hard and still kept fighting and won. But when you surrender, that's you saying, I quit, it's over. And that's the most definitive form of victory possible in any form of grappling. And that, I think, was the true appeal of jiu-jitsu. The further you get away from the idea that jiu-jitsu is about control leading to submission, the less interesting the sport becomes. And we must do as much as possible to push athletes towards that form of that expression of jiu-jitsu. Don't just win by the minimum amount to get the job done, but go the extra distance and try to win by submission. Now, you just mentioned the name of Marcelo Garcia. He was one of a handful of athletes. You see, Hodger, Gracie was another, who at a time when the rule set didn't demand it, went out of their way to go the extra distance and fight from beginning to end for submission. And what do you notice about those athletes?
They're legends.
They're legends. They're loved to a degree which all those other athletes, and don't forget, they both lost. Okay, they both had their losses. They weren't undefeatable, but they're legends because of the way they fought as much as for the victories themselves.
Yeah, they represented true jiu-jitsu.
They represented the ideal of control to submission. And there's a sense in which athletes have to understand, if you want to build a brand in jiu-jitsu, you can't just go with that minimalist approach of do enough to win, be happy with that. And you have to go into expressing the ideal of jiu-jitsu. Now, the natural response on the part of many organizers is to try and create rules which force athletes against their will to go the extra distance. That was the intention in ADCC, the Abu Dhabi approach. They took away points in the first 5 minutes so that athletes would be encouraged to go for submission holds. Now, some of them were, but as you correctly pointed out, most of them weren't. They actually used it not as a means of encouraging submission, but actually avoiding any form of contact and making for a very boring first 5 minutes in many cases. So what I truly believe is that there's never going to be a rule set which forces athletes towards submission. The way it's going to change is through culture. It's got to come, I believe, from coaches creating a culture where athletes strive for a higher ideal in jiu-jitsu, which is control to submission rather than minimum advantage or points to score a win and be happy. It's got to come from a training room culture rather than rule